There's something about basements that's inherently eerie. Perhaps it's the way they're partially buried in the earth, or how they seem to collect the silence and secrets of a house. I wasn't particularly afraid of mine. Maybe because it was the gaming hub, stuffed with all sorts of consoles and games, making it more of a cool hangout than anything spooky. I never really got why people made such a big deal about basements being scary. Until, well, I had a reason to. Isn't it strange how a single bad experience can dramatically shift your perspective? Every so often, my mom and dad would head out for the weekend to help out my grandparents. They're getting on in years and need a bit of extra help around their place. It was one of those unspoken family duties, but honestly, I never minded. It meant I got the house to myself, which was pretty sweet. Our place is pretty chill, kinda big for just us three, which is cool in its own way. It's got that lived-in vibe, with all sorts of stuff from our trips and random bits and bobs everywhere. But the real deal? That's the basement. Down there, it's like our own little world, a total escape from everything else. We've got it all set up with gaming consoles, old and new, a TV that's been through the wars, and a couch that's more patches than sofa. So, with a free house on the horizon, the weekend was set to be epic. I'd invited my best buddy over for what we billed as the ultimate gaming marathon. The only interruption we planned for was the occasional pizza delivery. That is, until the storm hit. It wasn't just any storm. It was the kind of tempest that had the trees bending in half and the house groaning like it was about to up and walk away. We barely noticed at first, so immersed were we in our virtual battles and victories. But as the night wore on, the storm seemed to creep closer, its howls and whistles becoming a soundtrack to our gaming. Between levels and loading screens, we'd flip channels, catching bits and pieces of old sitcom reruns, laughing at jokes we'd heard a million times. It was the perfect blend of gaming intensity and chill TV breaks, making us forget about the world outside. The storm might as well have been part of the game, with lightning flashes syncing up to our screen's explosions. We were in our own little bubble, with the glow of the screen lighting up our faces and the sound of the rain a constant backdrop to our banter. But then, amid the blend of game sound effects and the storm's fury, a different kind of noise broke through. Not the digital kind you brush off in a game, but real, heavy, unmistakable footsteps thudded above us, jarring enough to make us stop and look out above. It was one of those moments where everything goes quiet except for that one sound. "Did you hear that too?" I asked, half hoping my friend would laugh it off. But the look on his face told me he was just as freaked out. No way were my folks back already. They were due back Sunday evening, and here we were, barely into Saturday. With no cell signal in the basement, and my phone conveniently forgotten upstairs in my room, I decided to check out the situation. Peering through the narrow gap in the door, I noticed that the lights were switched on in the kitchen. Definitely my parents returned earlier than expected. But when I was about to walk to them, my heart stopped. The dim hallway light revealed a silhouette that was decidedly not my mom or dad. It was a man, moving with a purpose through the shadows. Panic is a funny thing. It hits you like a wave, cold and suffocating. I stumbled back down the stairs, signaling frantically to my friend to hide. We crouched behind the sofa, the fabric smelling of stale popcorn and fear. Questions raced through my mind. How did he get in? The doors were locked, the windows sealed tight against the storm. The spare key? But only the family members knew it was hidden under the third flower pot on the porch. Tucked behind the sofa, we were trying to breathe without making a sound, which is way harder than it sounds when you're freaking out. The storm was doing its best to cover up for us. But man, every little noise in the house seemed like a giant arrow pointing right at us. We could hear him stomping around upstairs, and it felt like the floorboards were going to give him away. Then, all of a sudden, everything went quiet. That's when we heard the basement door start to creak open, and a strip of light from upstairs began to slice into our dim hideout. Then came the footsteps on the stairs, each one booming in my ears. My buddy and I exchanged "we are screwed" looks in the gloom. Our gaming den had been invaded, and there we were, cornered, with the guy we were hiding from stepping into our space. Looking through the corner of the sofa, it seemed that he was familiar with the place. But then the realization hit me harder than the thunder outside. This wasn't some random break-in. This person was here for a reason. "I know you're down here." It was a voice I recognized, one that belonged to family gatherings and birthday parties, before it all went wrong. It was my uncle's, the one who kind of vanished after getting mixed up in some really shady stuff. The kind of crimes that made our family the hot gossip topic, and not in a good way. But there he was, standing in our basement, like he was searching for hidden treasure or something. I was torn between freaking out and wanting to confront him. Like, what was he even doing here? Did he think this was some sort of family reunion spot? But then he started shouting, making it clear he wasn't just going to leave. He was like, "You better show yourself or you'll wish you had." The choice we made then wasn't really a choice. We didn't really even have much of a choice. It was all about making it out of there in one piece. We quickly came up with a plan. The moment his back was turned, we were going to make a break for it. And that's exactly what we did. As soon as he was distracted, we bolted for the stairs, not even caring about the noise. Breaking out of the basement and into the pouring rain felt like breaking out of a prison. But then, standing there in the rain, I realized, wait, where's my buddy? That's when this awful scream from the basement nearly gave me a heart attack. No way I was leaving him behind. So back in I went, heart racing like crazy. I found my friend on the floor. Poor guy must have passed out from the sheer fright. The house was dead silent, like the scream had sucked all the sound out of the world. I quickly went for a phone call to the police. My hands were shaking so bad it took me forever to fish out my phone, and that's when I saw it. Like a gazillion missed calls from my dad. I barely glanced at the notifications when one message stopped me cold. It was from my dad, a heads up that my uncle was on his way over and nothing good was coming with him. Talk about timing, right? Fast forward, and we're in the hospital, my friend lying in the bed, and I'm just there trying to keep it together. What the hell did we just witness? When suddenly my parents arrived. Dad's got this look, like it wasn't just a fear, but he's got something heavy to say. Dad starts off by saying how sorry he is, like he's carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Then he dives into this story that sounds straight out of a soap opera. Apparently, a while back, my uncle's wife got really sick with Huntington's disease. It's one of those illnesses that just sneaks up on you, and before you know it, things are looking pretty grim. So, my uncle, he's desperate. He needs a boatload of cash for her treatments, and he turns to my dad for help. He's talking about selling the family house to cover the costs. But my dad, he's caught in a tight spot and can't make it happen. That's when things between them start to really go south. My uncle gets caught up in some seriously dodgy stuff, trying to scrape together the cash any way he can. But here's the kicker. His wife passed away that very night. My uncle, he's out of his mind with grief and rage. He calls up my dad, saying he's coming over to make someone feel the pain he's feeling, to make someone pay for his loss. It was all a twisted way of dealing with his grief, lashing out because he couldn't save the one person he loved most. Sitting there in the hospital, listening to my dad spill all this, it felt like we were living a nightmare. My buddy's lying there, knocked out because of all this madness, and I'm just trying to piece together how a family squabble turned into the scariest night of our lives. In the end, the basement, once my ultimate hangout spot, now felt tainted, haunted almost. The thought of chilling there again, of trying to recapture the carefree fun we had before, it just didn't sit right. Something inside me had shifted, and no matter how much I wanted things to go back to normal, I knew they couldn't. I just couldn't be in that basement anymore.
Thank you.